We'll start the Personnel and Finance Committee at 7:55. We have a pretty short agenda here. The first thing is to discuss the monthly budget and check ledger. Our expenses are at about 41%, which is the same as this time last year. And then, of course, there's a list of checks. Did anybody have questions or comments on that? Okay, then moving on to discuss food service for 2016-2017. I have just a couple of comments. I made a couple of phone calls and talked with some other, one that has several accounts in Wisconsin, and they don't have any accounts that are not in the National School Lunch Program, and it was a really kind of a refreshing take to hear a different point of view. And I'll just point out what made me call them was I looked at the online lunch menu they had, and every day for their elementary building, there's 4 separate entrees for those students to pick from. Some are as simple as, I noticed there's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich offered twice a week. But we've talked a lot about making sure that our kids are eating, and it doesn't matter how healthy a lunch is if kids aren't eating, and I totally agree with that. But when I look at that menu, again, it's just a menu, okay? So to see the lunch that menu dictates is different. But when I look at that menu compared to ours, it just looks like one, like if I had a choice to walk into 2 cafeterias based on the menu, I would definitely be walking into that one. So that was an eye-opener that if they're in the lunch program and they have this, what at least in writing is more robust, that was an eye-opener. Also, when I talked about commodities and shared a little bit of the discussion that, from what I understood, that person is confused as I am. They said, look, you had $40,000 in commodity coming, that's $40,000 with free food. The explanation it seemed we got was there's a $10,000 processing fee on that because those commodities are turned to things that are more appetizing. And then you're left with $30,000, but and I don't know if anybody followed it better than I did, but the bottom line was then you're back charged at $30,000. Some of that apparently was required accounting on that, but it seems like we don't, at least from our current food service preventer, benefit at all from the commodities that go with eating that we would have if we were in the National School Lunch Program. And I just think that we would really at least have a different perspective I think it would be our due diligence to hear from another lunch director. And similar with the other things we talked about with custodians and stuff, it looks like we're going to be going to a request for bid on this. That probably doesn't have to be due or go out till March or even April. So I'm wondering if the board, Tom, of course, but the rest of the board too, would you like to hear, have another 20, 30-minute Q&A with a different lunch director in March?
I wouldn't have a problem with that at all.
Yeah, I think we should always be looking, whether it's food or anything, we should always be looking at other options, because we shouldn't just stick with what we've done forever, because there's always something better out there. And I'm sure we've had Tahoe probably since I've gone to school here. So if there are better options for the students, it makes a lot of sense to do that. And then also going to your point, Matt, about getting back into the federal program, Matt and I spoke about, there's a bill going through right now that supposedly should pass, that they're going to change requirements where it only has to have 50% of the whole wheats with the school lunches. So for me, I would be curious to learn where we're at right now for the current school program. What percentage of our lunches are the whole wheats? Is that something where we currently, with what we're doing right now, with the students liking the lunches, where we could go back to the federal program and not even change our menu? Obviously, looking at the other options for different vendors, but without having to make it all whole wheat pasta and whole wheat everything, that might be an option to help save us money and still be better for the kids.
We were sitting here last time listening to Tahoe, and the statement was made that we're serving the same food as if we were in the federal lunch program. That really concerned me, and I guess even frustrated me, to the point of I thought that was one of the things that was going to be different when we left the federal lunch program, and I happen to have 2 kids who decide to pack their lunches. So I've looked at the menu off and on, but I don't know from when we were versus when we are now as significant of a difference. But I was really hoping that the committee would decide to take it out for a bid. As far as if we listen to another food programs, management, I don't really have a preference on that, but definitely want to see it go out for bid and going back into the federal lunch program would be my personal.
Does it have to be the entire district? Can it be by school? It seems like I always get the most feedback from Mrs. Markle on
Sure.
the dramatic difference in liking being in or out of it.
Mhm.
I was just curious. I mean,
Well, I think
probably
there's
that's
a
the
great-
whole district, but.
Yeah, just for bookkeeping purposes, it would be difficult depending on the way to do it. And as an entity, I've heard, I think the statutes do say that as an entity, you do have to do that. I'll find out. From what I was reading today, they always listed it as a school lunch provider. So you're that entity for going out for bid, and then, whether I haven't seen one where it was split.
That's
That could be something in there though, of how do you encourage middle schoolers or something, what kind of choice you have?
Yeah,
Like
actually,
information we could gather as
Yeah,
part of
there
the, I
was-
think that's a good point.
yeah, and part of that too is, even though you're using kind of a standard form, because what happens is, from the reading as I understood it today, was that, once you go out to bid, the RFP goes out, and it's pretty straightforward, school milk program, federal lunch program. Once those bids come in, once you choose one, before you execute the contract, you do have to submit it to the TPI for approval, which that makes sense, I guess, because there's so many moving parts on something like that. But there are parts in there where you can put, and I know that some school districts do go through that. They say, well, this is a particular concern for us here. What can you do for us? And I know that they say that, they will meet the needs. They will try different things. They will, so yeah, I think that would be something that, school districts that are under the same guidelines that have done vastly different things. So to get interest.
How soon do we have to go for bid if we're gonna do this?
I'll check into that, I'll get back to you. Again, this one is, I think, because of the budget process the way we are, I think we would probably want to do it within the next, probably before April.
Because if we are gonna go out to bid, which I would hope that we do, I would like to see probably 2 bids for each of the vendors, one in the federal program, one out of the federal program, and then also I would like to see menu samples of what they're doing within their current school district. or
They
the current
do,
schools.
yeah, that's always, they do 20, it's pretty standard, because you do a 21-day cycle, and then you can do 21-day cycle to elementary, 21-day cycle to middle school, you do, breakfast, you can do all kinds of stuff, yeah, so, actually, I can shoot you the standard format, so you can see too, you can take a look at it. And I know you're saying okay now, but once you start reading it.
The other thing is, last time we went out to bid, they did invite staff, like the principals could go out to different sites, because I think, I'm trying to think if Burlington had a different vendor.
Burlington does,
Yes.
Oconomowoc has another vendor as well, so there are some in the area that are available.
I think the timing trick was when you have to declare for being either in a program, correct?
I think so, but, even if we miss that, the point here is that we're doing it so that we can set it, we're looking at the future. So if we decide that this is the right move, even if we miss that deadline for, say, next year, we do have that option for the future. We're moving into that, so even if, that's the point.
True. I just mean if, we do have a couple other vendors in here that say, hey, well,
Well,
this,
Yeah.
if you jump on this now,
Yeah.
you can save X or you can do X, to know what that time frame is as well.
Is there any reason to sit on going out for bid?
I can see how soon I can get it together. No.
Just wondering if you would be interested in getting a breakfast bid also as a part of that, so that schools that have a higher free reduced lunch rate would really appreciate that. Is that correct?
And I know I've had that discussion with Matt, talked about that a little bit too. It's difficult when a food program is year in and year out losing money. Breakfast programs are not money makers. Lunch programs usually are, and usually what happens is the money you make on that lunch program, you usually spend on your breakfast program. So,
If you're in the food program.
yeah.
What we did see last time too, one of the vendors offered us, it was kind of a going cart kind of a program, where they took the food, they just took some sort of snack to the classrooms and they could buy that for breakfast. And that seemed like whatever district that was, it was working pretty well there. It's something, not a full breakfast in the cafeteria, but it's actually just, cheaper for the food service people too, because you don't need all that manpower for the full breakfast program, but it's something that we could think about.
Well, the other students that are being reduced, is it all purchase or is it, they would get free
They
breakfast?
would
if
then
were in
get
the
it
food
free
program?
breakfast.
Yeah, that's the advantage of it.
And they never get enough, then they get a snack.
For the bidding process, can we, and I don't know how we did it last time, can we make sure then that we do get, as many bids as possible from the various vendors that are qualified to do this?
Sure.
So I don't know if last time they got just to select you, and that's like hiring vendor, or how that works, just.
There is a
That's all the
significant
people
cost
who would
difference between.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Tucker
that's
and
what it
Newman.
was. It is,
We're not a big.
We had three.
Okay.
It was
So did
significant.
the people in like Burlington, did they just not bid it, or?
I can.
No,
They bid it.
I believe that vendor was.
It was Aramark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Fairmont.
They bid it, but they were only bidding, of course, by being out of school lunch program, and they looked at it as a $200,000 loss. And they are actually one of the food providers that only, at least in the state of Wisconsin, only do National School Lunch Program menus. They don't have any districts that are out. So for them, it probably would have cost more to do a carve-out for one district and change the menu. So I'm just guessing, but I'm guessing they were bidding the same menu. And just with $200,000 less in reimbursement. So they were about $140,000 loss on their bid. Again, this is a little bit hypothetical because we don't know, but it may have ended, if they were bidding on us being in, we would have had a $60,000 surplus, when instead we had a $20,000 loss last year. So again, those are a lot of unknowns, and that's why, especially if we're going to work on a request for a bid, I want to talk to another director, because we may want to put specific things in that bid. And if we don't get a little bit more information about how this works and the importance in a different perspective, we might miss some things. But definitely, if we put it out formally, we might get 6 bids or 8 bids.
yeah, I don't know how many, I don't know how many providers are in the area, but I wouldn't doubt that you'd get, to 5. I mean, that wouldn't be unusual.
And I want to make sure we don't miss that deadline though, because it was my first board meeting in May where Taher came back, and Dawn has done a great job of keeping this on the radar. And that's why we, started at this January, which we were hoping is plenty early, but I don't want to.
It happens right before the election, because it was like, things that happened right before I got on the board, it's always right before that. Whatever
I
the
think
cutoff
Whose
is.
committee is this?
This is.
Why don't we do this? I'll get on that tomorrow. We'll see if we can get.
So for March, if we could look at then a timeline for bids.
If we need to get out, what I'm saying is if we need to get out an RFP prior to that.
Prior to March.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Taher in May last year, our first meeting, he was asked, is it too late to get back in? And he said, no, but
Okay.
you'd want to move quick. So
I'll
I
find
think-
out. I'll call the school, there's a state nutrition school, DPI consultant. I'll get a number.
And then can we invite then another food director to?
I'll grab some. Let me see who will do it.
Okay. And then just for the rest of the board, once, if we do request for proposals and we get bids, then just like some staff did, I'm sure all those districts would invite us as well, if we want to go and see how what food items and how the students. I can't tell you that it was clearly described by this one food director that their approach is that the school has a role, or hopefully will have a role in providing all these different foods, and they clearly see their youngsters who have been doing this, you know, kindergartners who are now third graders, have a totally different approach than, part of this is, of course, changing it, but they just look at that, those are the normal foods, and they eat them. Where, sure, the 6th, 7th graders who had this switcheroo and a little more established eating habits haven't. But we also need to discuss as a board, I think, do we feel we should have some role in providing that? Because some kids don't get any of that at home. You know, they look at vegetables and fruits as foreign objects. There's no expectation. So, and then the other thing that connects into this is, what do we do about our enrollment in free and reduced? Because I realize it may just be a trend, but for 18 months now, there's been a disincentive if we identify somebody, at least in the cafeteria. Because if you now identify somebody who qualifies for free and reduced, taxpayers are buying that lunch. Where previously, when you are in the National School Lunch Program, every time you identify a student that's on free and reduced lunch or qualifies, you get like $3.30, but you only have to, of course, provide them a $2.50 lunch. Times that by 180 lunches, times by the number of kids. There's an incentive to identify those students, not to mention with other things about Title I, we looked at the costs for teaching staff development and stuff that Title I funds pay for. So what can we do to be more aggressive to make sure any students who qualify get anti-merit?
I run, I do a direct certification to the state, and I run that all the time.
What is that? Help me understand it.
You take your file of your students and you send it out to the state, and they send your file back, and it tells you who's eligible for free lunch. And based on if they're receiving any services through the state, like if they're on food stamps or Badger, I don't know if Badger Care qualifies. There's a couple, 2 or 3 different programs with the state that sort of tag those people that they're eligible for the benefits too. So
Those are the automatics, but we could have people, right, that aren't getting food stamps but still qualify.
And we still, like, for instance, like Mrs. Markle at registration, that's one of the stations, talk about, you know, you're eligible for free, you know, if you think you're eligible for free and reduced, do those things too. And usually what would happen is, we, you know, how I've done it in the past is those forms go home with everybody. You know, they go home with everybody and, you know.
But again,
But you have to do more than that, because
Yeah,
oftentimes those gender families are not filling out those forms or filling out
Yeah,
the
we thought,
forms,
and
you know. You
a
really
lot of
have
that
to
would be
be
built in role too,
conscientious.
filling up with families that they, and teachers,
Yeah.
same thing.
So do you feel, again, I don't think the district has done anything wrong by any means, I understand it's doing the same thing, but we had a lot of discussion on social media and stuff 18 months ago, 2 years ago, where, you know, a lot of people, there was some shaming going on about if you were in school lunch, there was understanding that we were getting out, but maybe some people only heard we're getting out and that we're not still providing it if you do qualify. So what would we do different though? I mean, can we beef this up with the remaining time? Because if we go back in a school lunch, part of the funding is based on the previous years. It's just like enrollment in 4K. I want to capture as many people as possible, so if the board decides to go back.
We can have a discussion, we'll have a discussion. I see what you're,
Promoted.
yeah, I see what you're saying.
Well, why do you think that not everybody that qualifies is in the program?
It's a percent decrease, right?
Yeah,
It seems
we
more
lost-
significant than.
We lost 25% in 18 months. And it could be a trend, but I did notice at least at the most recently reported, the high school went up, and they're our best match. So unless, you know, it was a lot of 7th and 8th
Well, high school would
graders.
go up if we lost a bunch. If we had a bunch in the program and then all of a sudden they dropped off because they went to the high school.
It's a possibility.
Yeah.
It
that's
would drop
good.
off at our Fox River, but it wouldn't drop off.
It just seems odd that we
You'd
make
have to
this
see
change.
buildings
you know.
drop off.
Seems more
Drops.
significant than it should be. in looking at other trends.
So, yeah, I mean, we'll have a discussion about it. I see what you're saying. We'll see what we can do. Figure it out.
All right, anybody else? It's been fun investigating some of that, and it's been a learning process, but I just want to make sure we have all the info and we can make the best decision going forward.
Yeah, I
See if
see.
we're looking at it. Okay, then, that's it, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. We are done at 8:50. Thanks, everybody.